Hello and welcome to the Hard Card podcast, recorded and filmed at Authentic Collectables HQ in Perth, Western Australia. Today we're joined by a man with not only one of the most famous names in modern Australian and Kiwi motorsport history, but is at the head of a team that's very much on the rise, and that man is Matt Stone. Matt, lovely to have you on the line. How are you today?
Yeah, very good. Great to be on your podcast for the first time, and definitely fun times ahead.
There's nowhere else we can really start except Tasmania, because it was a bit of a roller coaster at times for you guys, but overwhelmingly positive weekend for the team. I mean, a weekend like that, or even if we look at, the AGP or Darwin last year, it was nearly impossible to achieve in the Gen 2 era. How important is it for a smaller team like yourself, for your crew to be able to go into weekends knowing that these winning weekends can actually happen in this Gen 3 era?
Yeah, look, I mean, absolutely. I think the team itself, we've been growing steadily for a long time, and even in the last year of Gen 2, particularly at Tasmania, we saw some promise there. But Gen 3 has been really good because for the first time ever, we've had brand new equipment, brand new cars, same spec as everyone, and we can just focus on going racing the way we go racing, without having to worry about whether or not we've got the latest and greatest parts underneath it. So, for our team and the way we are, which is more of a, the art of going racing rather than designing the latest and greatest parts, Gen 3 and the current formats really play to our strengths. And, for us, it's really enjoyable to just go out there and on an even playing field and show that we can match it with the bigger teams and we can just keep growing year on year and keep getting better performance. So, no, it's definitely a good vibe within the team.
We were having a chat off the record. I think it was at the Bend last year after it had been announced that Jack was on the move and you were obviously going to be in the driver market. We were chatting about Nick Percat. There was some, I don't think I'm speaking out of school, there were some reservations. He was coming off a couple of really tough years. What got him across the line for you as the guy? Obviously, it's been such a successful move. What got you across the line for him to be the guy to come into and lead the team after Jack LeBrock left?
Look, we were very happy with Jack, and when he was moving on, we were determined to get someone that could pick up from where he left off and keep the momentum going. We didn't want to start again with another rookie. We had Cam Hill, still do, very happy with Cam, and he was our rookie. So we wanted to get someone who was experienced, someone who we thought we could, really build the momentum the team had going forward, which made it quite a short list, and obviously the reservations around Nick and his last two seasons were there. But when we're looking at those candidates, and it's hard to look past Nick, everything leading up to the last two seasons. He was top 10 in the championship 4 years in a row with BJR. And, for us last year, our goal was to finish top 10. And unfortunately, we missed out right at the last round. Coincidentally enough, because of a clash between Nick Percat and Jack LeBrock, took us out of contention for that top 10 championship finish. But so, when you look at Nick and 4 years in a row to have achieved that, and while we at the time were pushing so hard to try and achieve that for the first time, it really puts stock in his ability that he was able to put 4 seasons together in a row consistently. And that's probably the driving fact that made us look past the last 2 years. And then, credit where credit's due to Nick's manager, Gareth. He was able to put, I think Nick was thinking maybe he didn't want to go racing, and we were thinking maybe Nick, wasn't looking that flash based on where he was. Gareth put us together and got us talking about race cars, and, once we're both passionate racers, so once we got excited about it, it's sort of the wheels started turning themselves. So, it took a bit of work from, parties around to make it all happen, and I think we're all sitting back now pretty glad the way it turned out.
Nick kind of spoke on the Saturday night in Tasmania about the fact that, obviously he had that fantastic run with BJR. He had a tough couple of seasons at Walkinshaws, but this is probably the happiest he's been in his career. That must be a nice thing for you to hear as the guy that owns and runs the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and we're a small team. We're all hands on, myself included. And there's no bullshit is effectively the team motto. So I think for Nick, we just want to go racing and we want to win, and Nick fits in well to that. We cut through all the rest of it, and just at the end of the day, the racing comes first, and we focus on that. And that's a good atmosphere for anyone who genuinely just wants to go out there and try and win. And like we have days where everyone's capable of making a mistake, and sometimes in pit lane, the game is rigged against you. We've got a good group where everyone makes mistakes, but we all just, rather than putting each other down when a mistake happens, everyone pumps each other up. Whether that be because the driver put it in the fence or we missed a call in pit lane, and I think that's a really good atmosphere, and it's a good way to go racing as a team, and Nick's slotted into that really well.
Well, I think even Tasmania kind of highlighted that, when things didn't work out in qualifying on the Sunday morning, there was just belief that the car was fast and that the race result could come, rather than toys going flying out of the cot. At least from a public-facing point of view, there didn't seem to be any dummy spits. It was just, let's get on with the job and you go get a result.
That in itself is a huge credit to Nick and his headspace and how well he fits in with the team, because, we got that one wrong from pit lane quite spectacularly, really, considering how much pace we had in the car. I've seen that situation where drivers get out, they're frustrated, and they absolutely throw everyone in the team under the bus. And I think even in that scenario, Nick was pumping up the tyres of those in the team, even though we just made a big epic mistake. And it was just, righto, we're here, shit happens, let's focus on seeing what we can do in the race. And I think keeping that mindset, obviously we were fortunate that race had a bit of carnage, and that helped us move forward. But to go from last and into the 7th was a hell of an achievement, and you can't do that if you write the day off as soon as it goes pear-shaped in the morning.
Nick's got a new chassis coming for Sandown. Is there any reservations about breaking up a good thing between him and the car that he's in at the moment?
Look, I don't think so. I think we built new cars at the start of last year, and it was a big thing for us, and it sort of revamped our team and gave us an extra edge. So, to be able to bring the third Gen 3 chassis online, and to have been able to do it gradually, less under the time pump that we were at the start of last year, we feel that it'll just be a little bit nicer. I don't think performance-wise it's going to be any different, because it's still the same key car, and I think we're starting to see these cars cracking over time. So obviously by rolling out a brand new chassis, you eliminate that risk in the short term. So I think that's going into the 2 biggest races of the year. That's really good peace of mind. Performance-wise, I'm confident that thing will hit the track lap 1 and be easily identical to the car he's currently in or was previously in. So we're not stressed about that. We're just excited to get a third Gen 3 in the fleet and debut it, and take away any risks there might be in an aging chassis. We certainly have experience running the oldest chassis in the field back in 2022, and as a team we don't want to be in that position again. So the more often we can bring a new chassis in, the better.
Cam Hill, is he underrated as a driver, do you think? You guys are the ones that see the data. You see the comparisons to Jack last year and to Nick this year. I think he's ramped things up this year. Does he do things better than maybe the outside world gives him credit for sometimes?
Look, I think everyone, you always see things from the inside. You see stuff emerging before they sort of pop out, and then the whole world goes, wow, where did that come from? And, we certainly see the pieces with Cam. He's started this year, he was able to qualify 4th, and on the weekend, we actually thought, while we were disappointed with, what happened with car 10 on Sunday, we probably felt like just as much disappointment on the other side of the garage, because Cam had a pole. We feel we had a pole position on the making on Sunday at Tassie, and unfortunately, we didn't quite fully execute it. So I think Cam's definitely got all the pieces of the puzzle, and he fits in well with the team, and we're building him up to be a future race winner. And I think I think there's definitely the potential there. We see it as a team. We back him. That's why we've got him on a long-term deal. We really think we're going to get there with him, and I think with all these young drivers, they've got to take steps up, and he certainly took a step up this year, and we're confident that we can get him to take that next step, and and be a regular contender in the top 5 in the coming seasons.
So you do see winning potential in him as
Absolutely.
a driver?
You know, I think we can get there. I think he's got the potential. I think qualifying can be a strength, and you know, at the moment, qualifying is such a huge part of the category with the short races, and you know, he's got the makings of being able to do it. We've just got to figure out how to do it every day here at the racetrack, not just once in a blue moon. But you know, there's certainly the potential to be a consistent top qualifier is something that I see in Cam.
One of the keys to getting that latest win in Tassie was the work in pit lane. Now that's something that's been a focus for you guys for this season. You brought on a different rig. I think it's the rig that can move instead of the static rig. That's obviously making a difference for you guys in terms of your pit work.
Absolutely. We set our goals this year as last year the top 10 in the championship eluded us. So this year that was a must. We want to get a top 10 drivers championship finish. Our second goal was pit stops. We'd struggled with consistency of crew, and we'd probably had one of the worst collective pit crews in pit lane. So this year we wanted to go. We didn't just want to be adequate. We wanted to be the best. So our goal was to get into the pit stop challenge, which I haven't seen the official tally from Tassie, but by our calculations, I believe we scraped into it. So we've put a lot of work and built a culture of the guys in the team around internal competition, and that real passion that we've got behind pit stops. And it's great to see a race won in the pits, because that is 12 months of hard work from everyone in the team. We built the new pit stop setup. We practice every day. They all take it seriously. We sit there and we go over the video, and we all take constructive criticism on how each person can improve the tiny little bits of their routine. And we're starting to see the performance benefits of that. And obviously getting into the pit stop challenge is the icing on the cake, because it was hard this year with fuel races being included, which meant that sometimes you were basically getting 0 points because you went for an alternate fuel strategy, even though your pit stops were executed brilliantly. So we lost. We were always in the hunt for the pit stop challenge. We got bumped out over the last couple of endurance races because our strategies didn't line up with short pit stops. But to be able to get back in and get into that competition in the semi-finals when that comes up at Bathurst is really a credit to the team and the hard work they've done.
Speaking of pit stops and refueling and that sort of stuff, where do you sit on the... There's kind of this swirling debate about formats and that sort of stuff at the moment. Personally, where do you think we should be going as a category in terms of, shorter weekends, longer weekends, shorter races, longer races? What are your thoughts on all that?
I think, honestly, both have their appeal. If you look at Townsville, we did short races there for the last few years, and they were really good. And then we've gone back to long races, and they're still entertaining to watch. For me, I think some tracks favour different things, like the short races at the Grand Prix this year were entertaining, so I think that was really good. But honestly, I feel like the best call is a bit of both. Last year we were doing 3 races in a weekend. This year we're only doing 2. I feel like that's not enough. I feel like 3 races is good, and not necessarily all the same format. If you had a short race and then a long race, a couple of short races and a long race all jammed into a weekend, I feel like that sort of gives you the best of both worlds. And because some people like the sprint races, some people like the enduros, so why not give them both?
What about the calendar itself? There's kind of a bit of there's some growing pains. I think everyone agrees that we want to go racing more, but there's sort of a discussion about who's actually going to foot the bill for that in terms of, is it supercars, is it the teams, whatever. Where do you sit on growing the sport? Does there need to be a bit of give from the teams? Does supercars just need to bite the bullet and add some extra rounds and cough up the money?
Yeah, look, I think no question we need to go racing more. We've got the competition is so tight, and the racing is, in my opinion, really strong. So we should be doing more of it. We should be getting out there and getting as many races in as we can. The economics of it is obviously hard, and I think that's the biggest drawback. Like at the moment, all the teams are financially healthy, to my knowledge, which is probably the first time you can say that in 10 years. And I think, healthy teams mean healthy competition. There isn't a team out there that's struggling to stay alive, economically speaking. So we're all focusing on what we can do to go racing harder and better, which is why you get such a good show. So you need more rounds, but you need to do it in a way that doesn't push any of the teams into a bad financial position, because that will compromise the show. For years there's always been a team or two at the bottom of the grid that's struggling financially, and finally we don't have that. So as we grow, we've got to make sure that we keep that viability financially for the teams in mind. Otherwise, the more rounds will have less of the product will diminish because the teams will be struggling. So I think 100%, the economics need to be worked out, and the teams, it needs to be viable. We all want to go racing, and it just needs to be done in a way that we get the extra income required to do it, so that we can still do it at the top standard we're delivering today.
Data sharing or data scraping even has sort of become a bit of a topic this season as well, with the streams that are available through the Supercars app and that sort of stuff. As a team that does have a data arrangement in place with 888, where do you sit on the idea of opening up basic data if teams are just going to scrape it anyway, or should it be a completely closed shop, or what's your thoughts on that?
Look, I think data scraping it's a real easy topic, because Formula One, NASCAR, they've all gone through this, and all Supercars needs to do is look at how they all dealt with it, and that sort of gives them the game plan of what they should be doing. The amount of money that can be spent to data scrape, the sky is the limit. And I think, in my understanding, those premier categories that have had exactly this situation have basically decided that the easiest way to stop every team going out there and spending an endless amount of money to scrape the data is just to share it, get on the front foot and distribute everyone's data to everyone. Because if they're going to broadcast it to the general public, which they are, then teams are going to try and use that for an advantage. And then it becomes a case of whoever's got the biggest back pocket can buy that advantage, and smaller teams may not be able to justify the funding for it. And it just becomes a spending race of all the teams that doesn't actually improve the show. We're all just throwing money into data scraping in the background, which does nothing to improve the entertainment factor, and just all it does is diminish the money that we've got to spend on going racing properly in front of the crowd. So for me, I think that's why a lot of those other international categories have just gone, if we're going to share this with the general public, then we will just share the raw files between all the teams. That way there is no need to scrape, and it sort of puts it to bed. Otherwise, they've got to dial back what they're sharing. Remove the data element from the video stream to make scraping a lot harder, and that keeps the integrity of the data within each team and their arrangement. So I think Supercars needs to pick a direction. Personally, I think you take the advice of other premier categories around the world and what they've done, and just get out in front of it. And I know a year ago when the video first came out, this topic was raised, and obviously a decision is yet to be made on what direction they're going to go. So hopefully soon we see a resolution before too many teams start shoveling a bunch of money into a pit to achieve it.
Would it ever make a difference to a relationship like you have with 888, or when we're talking about, sharing setups and that sort of collaborative approach, is it just so far removed from the basic data you can scrape out of those streams?
Look, I mean, we've had a technical alliance with 888 for a number of years now. We use it for not just data. There's lots of elements for it, and vice versa. Us working in collaboration with them, it's mutually beneficial. So I don't feel that if suddenly we had everyone's data coming through via the server, that it would affect the way we go racing. All it would do would stop us go out and investing the money in scraping that data off the internet anyway. So for me, it is going to generate more work, because we're going to have more data, access to more data, so we're going to have to analyze it. But it's just, we're going to have that anyway. It just saves us having to go pay the money for it. Where
do you feel parity is sitting at the moment? It's been a bit of a seesawing kind of thing so far this this year, but we've seen wins on both sides of the ledger, even in Tasmania for the first time with a Chevy one day and a Ford the other day. The engine testing's still ongoing, understand that, but where do you think we're kind of sitting in the parity sphere right now?
Look, honestly, I think it must be pretty solid because, you show up to a track one day and you feel like the GMs are dominating, and then 24 hours later it's the Fords like we saw in Tassie. There's been a couple of tracks that have been GM, a couple of Ford. So I think, depending on what the last round was, we all think it's biased one way or the other, which, if it's so wishy-washy one way or the other, it means we must be pretty damn close to being in the right spot. I think we got to the point now where everyone's got a real handle on Gen 3, and it's more about who's got the setup for the track and the day, regardless of what marquee they're with. Some days we feel like the Fords have got far better drive off the corner. Other days we feel that we're not really struggling down the straight. So if it's so 50-50, then it must be pretty close, in my opinion. I think it's as close as it's ever been in the last 5 or 6 years that we've been involved in the category.
And the wildcard program, you sort of had this wildcard plan earlier in the year. That was sort of part, I guess, of building up the new chassis. I think, Cameron Crick was going to be part of that. He's sort of been moved into the main lineup for the Enduros now. What was behind the sort of decision-making to park a wildcard effort for this year?
Look, we're still very passionate about doing a wildcard. We've always been a real rookie driver team, and, we're competing at a level at the main game where, we don't want to reset our driver lineup to rookies every few years. We're quite happy with the 2 guys we've got, and we want to keep building that. But we still do have an interest in running rookies and helping them graduate into supercars. So a wild card is very good for that. Our reason for parking it comes down to, I guess, selfishness of our main game program. Sandown and Bathurst are the 2 biggest races of the year, and we just couldn't afford the distraction of running a third car and spreading our resources too thin. Look, we would really like to run wildcards at sprint rounds because, they're not as in-depth as the Enduros. You can run a wildcard without compromising our main effort. However, we're not currently resourced enough to run a third car at Sandown and Bathurst without it being a stretch. And, we'd rather do one thing well than 2 things poorly. Hopefully in the future, the rules are changed a little bit into the sense of how they used to be, where you could do multiple sprint round wildcards. And if we could do that, we 100% would lock in to do 2 or 3 next year. It's just a very hard justification to build up the infrastructure and the staff to just do 1 round, which is what we thought about doing this year. And then to make that viable, we were going to do one sprint round plus the 2 Enduros. But ultimately, it was just going to be a distraction at Bathurst. And we're going to Bathurst with the intention of trying to win it, so we don't want any distractions.
Let's finish with the Authentic Collectables Top 10 Shootout. 10 rapid-fire questions, and unsurprisingly, some are related to collectibles. So, Matt, who was your sporting idol when you were growing up?
Probably Marcus Ambrose, because I was in the very much grew up in pit lane, and was never that interested in ball sports when I had motorsport at my fingertips. So I was very much an SBR fan growing up in house. So I'd say Ambrose was definitely the one I looked to when I was young.
That must have been awesome growing up, seeing that team at its peak. This is not one of the top 10 questions, but that must have been awesome just to be involved in that and be seeing that as a kid.
Oh, absolutely, and those were the holy grail of engine development, chassis development, building cars, full manufacturing, full construction. Like growing up in that era, I still look back at those days fondly, and we aspire our team to get to those same levels of success. When I left Stone Brothers and eventually went out and started our own team, we're a very different operation in the sense that Stone Brothers was a design powerhouse, an engineering, manufacturing team, whereas we've never aimed to be that big in the design and manufacturing. We're more about going racing rather than building racing. So while we look to aspire to live up to those results that Stone Brothers had, we are a very different team today than they were there. But yeah, definitely those were the really glory days of motorsport, and I look back at them very fondly.
Did you ever collect any motor racing memorabilia, posters, whatever, when you were younger?
When I was younger, I used to collect the race shirts because I went away on tour. My 2 final years at high school, I did half the rounds, and the years before that, I obviously went along on occasion spectating in that. So I think I probably had a team shirt from when I was about probably 12 years old, and I used to collect them, one each season. At some point in the years that followed, they became too many, and I lost the drive to hang on to it. So unfortunately, that collection is lost to the wind.
Do you collect MSR memorabilia and stuff now?
Model cars, particularly the ones that have particular meaning or ones that a fond memory. I managed to squirrel away a couple of the SBR trophies from the heyday. I've got them in my office. I've got Shane Van Gisbergen's trophy from the Hamilton race win. I've also got a couple of surfboards from Gold Coast. Hopefully this year MSR can get its first surfboard of our own. But yeah, I've got a couple of trophies from my time at Stone Brothers that I've managed to get to plaster my office at home and work.
Do you have a favourite? Is there a favourite bit of memorabilia that you've got stashed away somewhere?
Surfboards, 100%. Like I can remember I think it was 2009, maybe 2010 Gold Coast. We got a podium both days, a second on Saturday and a third on Sunday, or vice versa. I was working on the car back then, and that was a really enjoyable and really hard one. Shane had been with the team for a few years, and that was the start of where the results were starting to come in, and it was a great race. I remember Shane and Jamie fighting for the lead, and unfortunately not quite getting it. So those 2 trophies that I've got, one in my office at work and the other in my office at home, they're probably the favourites for sure.
Do you collect anything or have anything interesting from outside of motorsport?
No, my wife would probably say boats, but we won't get into that.
What's the ultimate race car you'd want to own or drive?
My favourite was always a Ford XC Coupe or XABC. I actually have, my old man's got a Ford Landau that we're going to restore at some point. It's in the queue for a spare time that we don't have a lot of going racing, but certainly growing up, that car was always one I really looked to, and we've got the XC Landau in the back shed that one day we'll get tidied up and ready to go.
Who's someone from motorsport, past or present, that you'd really love to work with?
I'd say Bruce McLaren. A lot of stories from my old man. He worked with Bruce in the Can-Am series way before I even existed. And the memories I have of the SBR back in the day, I feel Jimmy has from that era of motorsport. They learn a lot. They're out there trying new things, and I feel like that's probably where I would set the needle.
Do you ever jump in one of the supercars and have a burn yourself?
It's tempting, very tempting, and a lot of people ask me that question. I think I'm too afraid to catch the bug. I'm too addicted to racing in the form that I live in it at the moment. I think if I just decided to get behind the wheel, then I don't need the distraction. So one day I will, but yeah, I'm not sure when that day will be.
There is the odd team boss that does do the sneaky lap now and then. Ryan Story, cough, cough.
We've talked about it for a Christmas party idea to take the whole team out to the track and do a shootout and see who can set the fastest lap. But every time we talk about it, I think the negatives of what could and most likely would go on outweigh tend to kill the idea pretty quickly.
Who's better on the barbecue out of Ross and Jimmy?
I'd say Jimmy. Jimmy loves his barbecue.
And last one, if MSR, can go on and win a title one day, can Russell Ingall's burnout ever be bettered as a celebration?
Well, I feel like Russell Ingall's won was only topped by Shane's one where he wasn't even in
That
the car
was pretty
while
special.
he was doing it. So, and even speaking with Shane after that, I even think he looks back at the footage and goes, "Wow, that could have gone so badly." So, I pity the team owner whose driver tries to beat Shane's, because they're going to be sweating bullets if it goes pear shaped. But hey, if we win when we win a championship, they can do what they want and celebrate. I don't care if the car comes back on a tilt tray.
That's awesome. Look, thanks for joining us, Matt. Best of luck for the rest of the season. It's been great to have a chat.
No worries. Great to be on.
We'll be back soon with more Hard Card. Don't forget to subscribe to the Authentic Collectables YouTube channel and hit the little bell so you never miss an episode.